Right, this is Honors Algebra 2 Pre-Calculus. We're doing 10.7 in Pre-Calc, which is polar coordinates. In example 7, we're going to convert a polar equation to rectangular, and we're actually going to do it with 3 equations, so I'm just going to inch the board over, and we'll start with A. Okay, so for A, we just have r equals 3. So before we do anything else, I want you to actually think about what this logically means. It means that if you were to graph this, right, and I say that because this one is arguably so simple it's hard. It's saying that in any direction, no matter what theta is, you're 3 units out from the pole. Well, that means that you're graphing a circle of radius 3, right? So point being, you actually know the equation of a circle that's centered at 0, 0, and has a radius of 3. So when we get the answer we get, I don't want you to be surprised. So when I look at the formula that I have to use, I can't use the x or the y formula, right? I can't use x equals r cosine theta because if I solve for r, I'd get x over cosine, but I can't plug in an x over cosine theta here because the purpose is to get rid of all of the r's and the thetas and only have x's and y's. That's what it means to be rectangular, right? So we need no r's, no thetas. So I can't use the x formula or the y formula. I can't use the tangent formula because the tangent formula doesn't even have an r. So the only one that would be useful to me is that x squared plus y squared equals r squared. Well, this isn't r squared, but I could easily find that r squared is a 9, right? And I know that there's a formula that says that x squared plus y squared equals r squared. So I realized that I could replace that r squared with a 9 and say, oh, here's my polar equation r equals 3 converted into rectangular. It looks like this. It's not a shock because we know that this is a circle with the center at 0, 0 and a radius of 3. That's what this is, right? X squared plus y squared equals r squared. So it's not at all a shock that that's what we end up with. But again, I think that I started with this one because, if anything, this sometimes stumps people more than other things because it doesn't really easily show you which of the 4 equations is going to help you. Okay, so let's move on to B. In B, I have r equals 5 cosine theta, right? So there's a couple things I can do here, right? One option, which is probably slightly easier than some of your other options, and you don't have to do it, but it's an option, is that you could replace the cosine theta first and see what happens, right? So we know that x equals r cosine theta. So x divided by r is my cosine of theta, right? So this is going to end up being a multi-step problem as opposed to the other one, which was pretty straightforward. So I'm going to have that r equals 5 times an x over r, meaning I'm going to get that when I multiply the r over, r squared equals 5x. Well, just like I saw in the last problem, I can replace r squared pretty easily. R squared is an x squared plus y squared equals a 5x. Now, you could stop there. There's no rule that says you have to solve for y. You're just trying to get rid of all the r's and all of the thetas, right? That's what it means to convert from polar to rectangular, is get rid of all the r's and thetas and have only x's or y's or x's and y's. All right, C looks like the worst, but I actually argue it's going to come out to be easier than the other two. So you look at C and you have r equals -7 on top of a 2 cosine theta plus sine theta, and it looks disgusting. But when you look at something that looks difficult, you should stop, take a deep breath, and think, what is the part of this that I hate the most? I think for almost everybody watching this, the answer is I hate that it's a stupid fraction. I mean, you also probably hate that it's got trig and everything else, but how could you deal with the fraction issue first? Because most of us hate fractions. Well, the easy way to do that is to multiply this entire denominator to the other side. If you do that, you're multiplying r times 2 cosine theta plus r times sine theta, and that's going to equal a -7. Well, let's reorder this first term a little bit. 2r cosine theta plus r sine theta equals -7. Well, I know what r cosine theta is, that's an x, and I know what r sine theta is, that's a y. So this is actually just the line 2x plus y equals -7. And again, you could totally solve that for y if you want, but there's no real reason that you have to. So that one looked really hard, but was actually arguably the easiest of the 3.